No.
All right, it is 7 o'clock on Monday, June the 11th. So I'll bring to order this regular monthly meeting of the Village of Trumansburg Board of Trustees. All board members are present. We do have a couple of agenda changes. The only change currently to the agenda is item 11C, the Village Hall boiler replacement is going to be tabled until next month, so we can get updated quotes. We're still waiting on a couple of quotes from a couple of the previous firms that have quoted us. If anybody gets really, really warm, we'll turn the air back on. Does anyone else have any changes, additions, deletions to the agenda? The only other changes are that Brian Snyder and Chief Ferretti, our EMS and Police Department heads, have been excused for the evening. Item number 3 on the agenda is our approval of minutes from the April 13th and May 14th board meetings. They are in the Dropbox.
I did make a last minute change. Ben pointed out that at the top of the table, the wrong board was still sitting there. So for April 1, within the table at the top, their names are, and I changed it before the meeting.
So we have 2 sets of minutes, which I would entertain a motion to approve. Motion, do we have a second? I'll second. A motion and a second. Any discussion or additional changes that need to be made to these draft minutes from these 2 meetings? All right, hearing none, then all in favor of approving the minutes from April 13th and May 14th, 2018, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? All right, both meeting minutes have been approved. Item number 4 is Matt McKenna of MRB Group. Would like to tell us some things.
Thank you, Morgan. Going to start with the planning board proposal for ongoing services that MRB Group has had, assisting the village planning board with old Hamilton Square project now, some 46 South Main Street project, I believe is the new project title. So right now, expected ongoing services would include secret part 2 and 3, ongoing technical reviews as the applicant continues to submit items, coordination with sub-consultant engineering firms working under MRB, as well as planning board attendance. And I think there's a schedule included of what is coming down the pipeline in the foreseeable future. So if there's any questions associated with that, and that's been coordinated with the village.
So I spoke with Guy Crow about this. His position is essentially that where there is some overlap of review abilities between E and MRB. It can be, in some cases, easier to charge that time back to the developer or the submitter of an application when a third-party firm is doing that piece of the work. If it's the village's attorney and you try to charge back that time, normally you can, but then it gets into, well, were they really doing specific project review work, or were they just doing work that is in the ordinary scope of the village attorney's job? If it's specifically under contract with a third party, then you can say, well, they wouldn't be doing anything else with respect to this otherwise. He also pointed out that where there might be redundancies between the two review capabilities, that his hourly rate is higher than MRB's. So it stands to reason to go with the smaller charge. Beyond that, it's simply just support to the planning board as requested. Rick, the planning board chair, does feel that it's worth having them available, particularly on the engineering review portion.
So you did speak very about this? Yes, that would be.
Yeah. He thinks that, I mean, MRB's wheelhouse is not legal review per se. Some of the seeker work, Guy does a lot of that kind of thing, but it'll be sort of up to Rick who to delegate it to. With MRB available, then it makes it easier to silo that piece of work as to who's doing it.
You're looking for the,
Nope, unless you have anything you want to throw in the mix. So then if there aren't any other questions or comments on it, then I would entertain a motion to approve this proposed amendment to MRB's planning board services contract.
so moved.
So motion, do we have a second?
Second. As long as
Any-
I monopolize the second.
Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Opposed, abstentions. All right, next up.
Before I get into the next proposal, I just want to touch base. Recently, in the last couple of months, the Village of Trumansburg water and wastewater treatment plant projects, capital projects, had been submitted to ACEC, the American Council of Engineering Companies, for potential award, and both projects were selected as silver medalists silver award for water utilities and wastewater treatment. So I just want to present those to the board. Turned out to be very successful projects and now acknowledged by the state. So it's just something that
Are you looking for?
the village should be proud of.
Very nice.
Do you know roughly what are they looking for in those questions?
So there's 4 different categories across the field of pretty much civil engineering, architecture, environmental, water, structural, and it's just kind of the merit of the project, the benefits, the undertakings. Some of the platinum award ones are, several $100 million projects down in New York City area where it's, MEP architectural, so it's quite a broad range, but it is something that Council of Engineering Companies do vote on, so it's something that every year MRB likes to submit a couple of our clients into the pool on behalf of our company.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And the next proposal that we've had, or have on the agenda for tonight is flow management plan. This is for completion of per the New York State DEC requirements when flows at the wastewater treatment plant exceed 95% of the permanent flow, that they require this flow management plan to be implemented for looking at reductions in I&I, correlating any main connections for the sanitary sewer system, looking at potential future upgrades or future implementation projects to reduce I&I, as well as some other items with correlating water consumption data throughout the community in hopes of getting the average annual flows below that 95% threshold. Go ahead.
So it's hopefully to get beyond the 95%. However, the outcome, if we've done everything around the I&I, will they raise that percentage?
So the first step after this flow management plan, if we're not under that 95% threshold, then steps could be taken to get the permanent capacity increase. That would require detailed engineering calcs hydraulically that the plant can push more flow through on an average basis, as well as looking at the biological process, influent headworks equipment, aeration tanks, or secondary clarifiers, and filtration units, amongst others.
Based on the work that we've done,
Correct.
we already know that they can raise that, correct? Yes.
Correct.
Okay. We're doing everything about I&I that we can.
Correct. Correct. There have been.
However, I just want to point out that there is a whole other side where they can slide as well.
Correct. We've done the flow poking study, trying to identify hot areas. We've gone through and done smoke testing in the village, identified areas. So this is whole part of the plan of reducing the I&I as well as.
And we are already well into what they were asking us to do anyway.
Correct. Correct.
Okay? I have to tell you, I was a little shocked at the price though.
Okay.
I mean, is there, based on the fact that we had done all of the relevant hydraulics and
Sure.
everything already,
Sure.
don't most of those reports already exist
Correct.
and just need to be packaged?
Correct. There is some additional work that will be needed. I can tell you that, we are doing this for several other communities. I can tell you that based on the work that we've already done, there is a reduction in the cost, the proposal that we provided. But yes, the majority of the work here, or a lot of the work has been completed in doing field work and identifying sections of the collection system relating to potential I&I.
Okay, so the $6,500, all this does not include further investigation for other I&I discovery.
Correct.
This is just for the reporting piece to the DEC.
Correct.
Honestly, I don't see that we have a choice. We have to provide the flow management plan. They only give us till August 1st. The DEC wants it. And we're fortunate in that we're already down the path quite significantly. However, maybe it's just me, but $6,500 is a lot of money.
So is it your contention that the MRB has sharpened its pencil as much as it can on this?
I can tell you we sharpened our pencil, not to say that, it's unfortunate. I would have to take it back to my managers, but I know that we've worked with the village quite a lot, and we appreciate that relationship.
Yeah, I don't necessarily want to cut the deadline too short if you come back with 6250. But if there was some, to Deb's point, if there was any wiggle room in there, then that would certainly be appreciated.
Okay.
Do you want to approve up to $1 amount so that whenever it comes back, we can not wait till July to sign it?
We definitely have to do that to be able to meet this deadline. Do I want to pick a $1 amount? I mean, I don't cut.
So I mean, we can approve up to this number, and then if they come back and say they can do it for less than that, we would
Okay.
appreciate it.
I move that we approve this up to $6,500 with deep hope it'll be less.
So we have a motion, and a second. We have a motion with default and a second.
It'd be cool.
Any additional discussion?
Who was the second, sorry?
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're gonna call this the,
I'm just curious, how does this fit into the original budget?
Doesn't.
This is right, something like this is unexpected.
This is a result of the overages that we had in the flow last year in multiple months with the July and the rains and the other. We have since taken actions like doing, Matt was saying, we've replaced some caps, we've done anything that was found in the initial investigation. We've already done what's been asked to eliminate the INI. There's still an INI issue. So we want to continue down that path. But the DEC is saying you're over 95%, as are, I would say, a good portion of other communities are over because of the rains. So, but they're making us do this, so.
and just to be clear for anyone keeping tabs at home, our sewer plant is constructed and engineered to handle about 1 million gallons per day, right? 1 million gallons per day of flow. It's the DEC permit that is limited to the 250,000 gallons. So if they would permit us for more, we can handle more. Since they haven't permitted us for more, and we're bumping up into that cap or into their permitted ceiling, then they're requiring this study to be done to see what can be done to reduce flow. And so we'll find out what can be done.
Despite the fact that something we've done already.
Right.
So we have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Anything else for us, Matt?
That's all I have tonight, unless there is any more questions for myself.
Is there a scheduled time frame for continuing the INI at-night rain search?
So, prior to this, speaking of some of the list of items that have been identified as potential INI sources have been corrected. I want to verify that. And B, as we've mentioned in our plans throughout, that once those items are corrected, we go out, do a little site work during the wet weather events and see if we can see a reduction or any correlation in drop flows. So, we would still continue to recommend that.
So, is there a time frame that you're targeting for that rain event discovery?
If we had a significant rain event in the next couple of weeks, I think it would be a good time that we could do it. It's weather dependent right now.
Right, no, I understand that. I just wanted to make sure that we're on top of that and driving that.
Correct.
Even before the hours first day.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
And you'll let us know in the next few days about additional pencil sharpening.
Get back to you right away.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay. Item number 5 on the agenda is reports from department heads. I see we have Deputy Chief Taylor in the back from the fire department.
Good evening, Matt Taylor, Trumansburg Fire Department. So I'll just give you the monthly report. We didn't really have anything else going on to report on unless Jason said something about it. So for fire and rescue calls, we had 15 total, 3 to the village, 8 to the town, 2 to Covert, 1 to Hector, and 1 mutual aid. EMS calls, not necessarily PCRs, because we know there's a difference. We had 85 total, 15 to the village, 35 to the town of Ulysses, 10 to the town of Covert, 2 to the town of Hector, 9 in Interlaken area, which is outside of the village of Interlaken's area, really runs outside of the town of Covert, so anything outside of that. 5 to Mecklenburg and 9 mutual aid, which is usually either to the city or all the way to South Central, which would be out in the town hall. Training hours, we had 741.50 if you're tracking those at home. That's a jump. We had 6 people go through the BFO class, which is basic exterior firefighting. It's about 115 hours or so per person. In-service hours, we had 80 for the fire, 283 for EMS, for a total of 1,105.01 and 100 calls per month for one-way typing. Calls year to date, previous month we had 92, and year to date so far we're at 192 since April versus our fiscal year. So, any questions?
Any questions from Matt? Thank you. Thank you. EMS and police have both been excused.
Dustin Ganders, DPW Supervisor. We basically spent the month of May mowing. We had a lot of projects on tap for last week and got sidetracked with the mulch grinders coming in for 3 days last week and grinding up our mulch. So we were not able to get to the signs, the welcome to T-Bird signs, and starting to pave water break holes. But that's hopefully this week now, after the grinder's been finished. And that's about it.
Any questions for Dustin? Our historian is to be excused tonight. She did send me an email with some additional projects she's working on with the county. The zoning officer position remains vacant. Code enforcer was excused for the evening, as was our treasurer, due to a family emergency, which brings us to you.
It's tax time, so I'm busy collecting tax money. And trying to work out some bugs with our new billing, water billing software. And just changing over because our new fiscal year began June 1, so it's just kind of getting things put away from last year and starting fresh and new. That's
We all know about you if we have questions.
You're very good at it.
For the mayor's report, we have a lot of items that are old business which I'll address. Keith and I will take the opportunity to formally announce what I think is the worst kept secret in 3 counties in law enforcement, which is that Chief Tom Ferretti, after 42 years of service to the village, has announced that he will be retiring as our police chief effective August 1st. A search has begun and the job posting will be going up shortly. And we will be looking for someone to fit the bill of the police chief in a community as unique as Trumansburg while not breaking the bank in doing so. And that is a tall order. But we wanted to take the opportunity to formally announce that Chief will remain chief until August 1st. Hopefully we will have someone in place in enough time to transition from his style of departmental management to whatever the new style of departmental management might look like. And beyond that, I don't have anything in particular to announce as far as that search is going at the moment. Keith wants to add any color to that.
He says he definitely does not want to party. He's not a party person. What's that?
We've never listened to him before.
No, I mean, just meeting with him and talking with him, I will say, the short time I've had a chance to be in this role, it's clear that his service to this community is quite remarkable, and it's a luxury we've had for longer than I've even been alive. So that really kind of, I think, puts it in perspective, and won't be easy shoes to fill, but we're going to get working on it.
6 on the agenda, the gentleman who is in charge regionally of Lime Bike would like to speak to us. He said he would try to be here as close to 7:30 as he could. I told him no rush, so we'll come back to him when he gets here. So we will jump ahead to item number 7, which is our first public comment period, which we will keep at 15 minutes for now, hoping that Jeff does get here. So if there is any comments or questions from the public, we would certainly entertain them now. Yes, sir.
Hello, I'm Jack Katz, 13 South Street, and a couple of issues that I'm not sure how they work out. One is the timeline for reimbursement for the services that the planning board is engaging. Is it, after whatever amount of time expires, or is it a regular schedule of payments? Just, somebody asked me about what the timeline was, so that's what I'm asking.
That question would best be addressed to the planning board. However, I will say that there is what's commonly referred to in the legal world as a developer's contract that's being developed which would effectively be between the village and the developer for all of those considerations. But that contract is in the works between the planning board and the developer.
Okay, so nothing has been established with the timeline yet, and that's being worked out between the developer and the planning.
More accurately, between the developer's attorney and the village attorney on behalf of the planning board.
Okay. Okay. Item number 2. The Trumansburg virtual government site on Facebook has come up. I don't know, not everybody is on Facebook, and I don't know if that would be considered somewhat exclusionary if you were really talking about, business that goes on with the village government, which is, a virtual government. So I'm wondering how people who aren't on Facebook could get that information, or if the fact that this exists be posted on the village website. I'm not sure that it hasn't. I looked, but I couldn't find it, and therefore, giving everybody an opportunity to tune in, which is, I think, the purpose of that Facebook page.
So it's a group owned by the village Facebook page. The name of the group is Virtual Village Hall. We decided in April that we were going to open up as many lines of communications as we could think of and as were convenient, because those two can be mutually exclusive sometimes. So we have the Ask the Mayor page on the website. We now have a way for Facebook users to ask questions of the village. It's not meant to be any type of a discussion board between board members. That's what these meetings are for. But it is an additional communications outlet for residents or non-residents, frankly, to be able to reach out to a village representative. It could be as simple as, hey Tammy, what day is yard sale day? Or it could be something more in depth. I'm generally of the opinion that more outlets are better than fewer. We have residents who don't have access to the internet at all. We have residents who don't use Facebook, certainly. But kind of trying to find a way that everyone has access to. This meeting is really as close as you'll get to that. And the argument can be made that some people don't have access to this meeting depending on their schedules or their abilities to get here. So I think it's really just meant to be a way to get as much communication available to the public as we can. We can certainly still accept letters and emails, but this is more of a broad brush approach. So that's
just a suggestion is just to post that this exists on the village website, and then more people will know that it is there, and should they want to tune in, they'll have the opportunity without, you know, really digging around too much to find out where and what it is. Just a thought.
No, it's a good thought. Based on the traffic stats of our website, probably more people would learn about the website from Facebook than Facebook from the website, but.
Yeah, well, that could be, but,
Point is-
you know,
point
as
is
you
okay.
said, some people are not, you know, tuned into Facebook, and some don't have access to the internet, so if they did desire to, you know, participate or, you know, see what's going on at that website,
For sure.
you know, they know it's there. Okay, only one last thing, if I still have some time. I was wondering about the replacements of the conduits on South Street, the stormwater culverts that have been installed below the sidewalks. Now, I know the contract was given to Streeter to do the sidewalks, but I wasn't aware that they were given a contract to do the infrastructure work for the stormwater management. And I asked a while back about the difference in funding between their bid of plus or minus $250,000 and what was designated as the funding that was going to happen, which was closer to $350,000, and that the explanation from the former mayor was that engineers had to be on the site to observe, which I found to be a pretty good job considering, you know, time and money. But the part of that, you know, difference between the bid for the sidewalk and the amount that was delegated to building the sidewalk includes some of that infrastructure.
Yeah, so Fisher Engineering is the project manager, so they are the ones who are on site. We actually have a project update meeting on Wednesday, so we've been getting updates every 2 weeks about where they are in process. Culverts, infrastructure, stormwater management are a necessary part of sidewalk installation, so it is part of the bid. If they have to essentially rip up an old culvert in order to put down a fresh sidewalk, then that new culvert needs to be put into place. So it is part of sidewalk construction. Isn't just pouring the concrete, it's everything that goes into the ground underneath the sidewalk as well. So it is all part of that contract, part of the same contract.
Okay, because, you know, it was initially stated that the bid was somewhere in the $250,000, $260,000. And I don't know if that section that had to do with the culverts and the infrastructure had to be rebid, or was that just a given once the contract was let for the sidewalks?
It was part of the original bid. You know, the underground work required to put the sidewalks where they needed to go, included the underground work.
Okay.
Plenty of time left. Any other public comment? Anyone? All right. It's still no line bikes, right? Shame he's coming here on line bike. All right, if there's no additional public comment or question, then we will move to reports from representatives. Welcome back, Nancy.
Glad to be there. It's doing good. I wanted to start with a couple of thank yous. Dusty, I know you or your crew helped us get our mailbox in at the town hall, and we're grateful for that. Tom has continued to provide our monthly report of the village activity that occurs in the town when another law enforcement agency asks for help. There is an intermunicipal agreement between the town and the village, and he records that activity for our knowledge, so we appreciate that.
And I'm not sure if the fire department has an extra copy of the report that you just did. We always like to get those so we can share them with our board members. In terms of the EMS, I know there've been some emails going back and forth. The town is interested in getting an update on the EMS services provided to the acute addiction recovery service, which is in the town and a very frequent user of those services. Last year, with help from Brian and the data he provided, the town representatives had a productive meeting with the CARS administration, and from the anecdotal reports from Brian, it looks like the calls from that facility are down significantly, but we're trying to nail down those numbers. Once they were aware of the issues and explored their options, they're trying to do more to triage so that they call the ambulance when they think they need it, but they're trying to use other resources when that's not necessary. But I will be following up with Brian to get some more detailed information so that we can schedule a sort of it will be almost a year, a follow-up meeting with CARS that I know Ben is aware of, and to the extent you want to be involved, but Brian's agreed to be part of that meeting so that we can make the stars align and get everybody's schedules right. So we'll follow up with CARS, learn from them about what they're doing to try to appropriately meet their health needs without overburdening either EMS. And for people who don't know, the town's interest in this is we want to make sure that anybody in the town is getting the emergency services they need. But because of the cost-sharing arrangement that we have, the town pays a share of EMS costs based on the total number of calls. And if we have a lot of calls going to an address that may not need all those services, we're trying to manage that without in any way jeopardizing anybody's health or safety. So that's in terms of the referencing the sidewalk project, part of it that is the town's responsibility is that strip along Route 96, and it took us a little while to sort of like get in here to realize that's a town sidewalk and therefore the town should be mowing it. And when we reached out to ask if your village could do it as part of that agreement that we developed for snow removal, I'll reference the thing. And then understandably, you were busy. So the town does have a mowing contractor. We asked him to tackle the small meadow that was growing on either side of the sidewalk. He's given us an estimate, and we will be taking care of that for the rest of the season. But probably whenever it's time, we may want to renew, when we renew our MOU about sidewalk maintenance, which right now just includes snow removal, we may want to discuss whether or not we want to do it that way or continue to do it through the town contract. But we'll accept responsibility for it. Of course, we just sort of really remembering that grass grows fast when it's raining. Actually, we did want to let people know that I think you know residents along Route 89 have expressed interest to the town about possibly forming a water district because the water quality in the lake last summer with the harmful algal blooms really created a dangerous situation, and it sort of reinvigorated their interest in having access to public water. And the town has asked MRB to begin to really, it's sort of costing out what it'll cost to do a more detailed study. Is that about right? Yeah. And so last week, I think it was, we had, at the end of May, we had a meeting with community members where it was Thomas, the supervisor, was giving an overview of the process, and then Matt here and Bill Davis were walking people through what the process is to create a water district and what some of the challenges might be involved in trying to bring water either up from Ithaca or down from Trumansburg to homes along the lake, and what some of those preliminary costs might be, and answer whatever questions people have. So it's still at the community awareness level, but the connection to Trumansburg is one of the options that is getting looked at along the way. So, and also in the village, as you know, the town of Ulysses has purchased the property on Sailor Drive. We are trying to get the state to reimburse us for 100% of those costs. And we keep discovering one more hurdle in that approval process. And the last step, we believe, is to have an independent appraiser appraise that parcel, which is actually comprised of 3 different parcels. And so they want 3 separate appraisals as opposed to one. But we will do what we need to do to render what we need to get our grant back. The other part of that, I think I mentioned this previously, is there will be, sort of irrespective of the reimbursement, and that sort of goes on its own track, but we will be pulling together some guidelines and some people from the community who are stakeholders in the use of that property to be able to sort of get from especially Sailor Drive residents what some questions and concerns they have about how people will use it and how use of that parcel as a sort of passive use open space will not infringe on their rights as residents. And we obviously will loop the village in on that too, because though we have money in this grant for signage, no signs have yet been commissioned, but we envision as posting signs near the entrance asking people to park at the farmer's market or the parking lot. And walk, if you're going to take a hike, it's not that much further than walking there. So more from that. The old church, which I've talked to you about for years and years, actually did close, has changed hands, and is now under sort of new ownership by a very ambitious and I think talented young man, Cameron Newhoff, who will renovate the church as a private residence. And at the Jacksonville picnic last Sunday, just yesterday, was canvassing the neighborhood, his neighbors, with a little postcard with sort of a whole bunch of different possible like business or community uses that he would consider when figuring out how to develop the rest of the space. So, but first he's got to get the animals out and the water hooked up and a septic installed and all of that. But I think he's up for the challenge. So we did actually, as a town, get some recognition from Historic Ithaca for having taken the steps we did to acquire the church and turn it over. So that was sort of very nice. I'm hoping in 20 years that Cameron would get that same award for what he's done to renovate it. And the last thing is, we are, I think, we're hoping in the final stage, negotiated to get a very experienced planner to replace Charlie Kiley, who left a couple weeks ago. And we do have part-time planners, 2 different people sort of providing some part-time coverage so that as town people have questions or need to do things through site review, or whatever, for zoning, on Tuesdays and Wednesdays from 2 to 4, John Szymanski is a very experienced planner who's filling in for us until we get somebody. And on Fridays from 10 to 1, CJ Randall, who performs that role actually for the town of Danby, is helping us out to bridge the gap. But hopefully within a week or so we should nail down the rest. We did actually talk to some very talented people, and we feel like we've got some good options here. So that's it for me, unless there's questions.
Any questions for Nancy?
Oh, I do have one.
Yes.
Water district, to include Waterbury Road. Is that being?
Which one?
The one that's going to include the Waterbury Road piece. Is that being addressed at all?
I know it's on our list. I'm not quite sure exactly where, but I can double check. I will ask again to track that.
Thank you.
Anything else for Nancy? All right, so we'll skip back to item number 6. We have Jeff Goodmark from Lime Bike, who's going to explain to us everything that he explained to me last week. That was actually really, really interesting to me about what Lime Bike is and what they would like to do here.
Yeah, good evening. How's everybody doing? Sorry for my lateness. So I'm the operations manager for Lime Bike in this Finger Lakes region. Currently, we are operating in Ithaca, New York, as well as Watkins, Wyoming. We have expansion plans that include the local universities, as well as some other little towns between here and there, as well as some of the larger cities, Binghamton, Syracuse, so on. Trumansburg is a great place that people from Ithaca are obviously very familiar with, and there's a lot of crossover between what's going on here and what's going on there in a lot of ways. And so we've already seen a lot of our bikes make their way out here via TCAT or otherwise. Black Diamond Trail is a very popular riding spot. And so what I brought to Mayor Hart was the idea of potentially either using Trumansburg as an actual deployment area, meaning that we would purposefully bring bikes to the downtown area and sort of see what happens with them. Or the other phase could be just the awareness, which is that people might bring bikes here and we would not be obligated to just come and get them simply because they were not within Ithaca's limits. So those are basically two different options of service that we can essentially offer depending on what's ultimately decided. Our company's main goals are affordability, accessibility, and availability. And we view this as a way to transform cities and villages moving forward. Every time somebody chooses to take a bike somewhere, instead of taking their car, they're saving the environment, they're potentially getting exercise, they're not having to deal with getting a parking ticket, they're able to get further across town than they would if they were walking. They can get a direct route from A to B without having to get on a bus or other ways they might get from one place to another. The affordability model is very important. Our bikes are very affordable. To unlock a bike and for a 30-minute ride is only $1. If you have a .edu email when you sign up for our system, then it's half of that, and it's only 50 cents for a 30-minute ride. The accessibility piece is that because we are trying to reach out to everyone across the board, while the best way to access our bikes is via a smartphone app, we realize that not everyone in the world has a smartphone app, and so we've created, through Bike Walk Tompkins, a way for people to sign up in person, potentially pay cash for access, like a few dollars, and then get a certain amount of rides per month that they would access via a traditional old-style cell phone where they can text the number of the bike to a special number that we would set up for them, and then that bike would unlock and they could use that. And then for availability, basically, our model is simply that we want to have bikes available for everyone at all different places. And currently, we have about almost 300 bikes within the city of Ithaca currently. And the idea is that if you take a bike to, let's say, the farmer's market and you go shopping and you come out and someone has used your bike that you brought there, the idea is that there would be another bike either there already or potentially one within a minute's walk that you'd be able to get on and go back home or whatever it is that you're going next. And so these are some of the things that are important to us. We basically let people, for lack of a better word, do whatever they want with our bikes. We want them to use them. We want to get in with communities. We want to be part of community events. We were in the Ithaca Fest Parade. We have made an arrangement with the Grassroots Festival. We'll be participating in the Ithaca Reggae Festival next week. All of these kind of events are great just to have our bikes there as availability for people to come and go to these places. Normally these are places that are hard to drive to because parking is always limited, or you have to park far away and take the shuttle bus. And so with the bike, you'd be able to basically drive right up to the door and park the bike right there and go right in, as far as the festivals and events are concerned. And we don't really have any other plans, but are open to all suggestions to what would be the best way to integrate into a community, to a smaller village like this, and sort of make it work for everybody. The other piece that I would add is we really do view this as a community project, and we are a privately owned for-profit company, so we do make that dollar on the rides, but we reach out to the business owners, we reach out to the people who are downtown, and we want them to be part of it in a way that if a bike seems like it's parked in the wrong place or has fallen over or is doing something that it shouldn't be doing, it's much easier for any individual that notices that to basically pick that bike up or move it the 2 feet out of the way so it's not blocking the sidewalk than it is to file a report with the police department or call our customer service line, which is in, which is like a 24-hour customer service line, and then they have to dispatch a team, and then they call me, and then I call someone to basically move that bike exactly those same 2 feet anyway. And so we try to make the awareness of how it all works and how it can work for everybody, up front through education and just kind of through if you've driven through Ithaca in the last couple of weeks, I'm sure you've seen them. They're pretty much everywhere, and that's kind of the idea behind how this dockless bike sharing system works. I'd be happy to answer anybody's questions that they might have. Or
would you just speak a little bit to what you mentioned last week about the average ride length, what you find people are actually doing in terms of when they get off the bus and take the bike?
So we're trying to fill in transportation gaps and solve problems of how someone will get from point A to point B. And we're specifically focused on what we call the last mile, which is you've taken the bus to Ithaca or from Ithaca to here, and you get off at the bus stop and you still have a 20-minute walk to your house. And so what we're seeing, what our goal is and what we are seeing through our actual data is the average ride is about 0.5 miles, so basically half a mile. It takes about 11 minutes is the average time people have a bike unlocked. So it's basically $1, and they're just riding that little bit from here to there. You see a huge spike in very late night rides, people that work in the restaurants and the bars downtown in Ithaca, who there's no more public transportation when they're done with work. And so they're getting on bikes at 2 o'clock in the morning. We're seeing a big spike there. We're seeing people who come into work in the city early in the morning, have to be in by 6. We're seeing 4:30 a.m., 5 o'clock in the morning of spike in people who are getting bikes and riding. In 47 days, we have 18,000 rides in Ithaca, for 7,000 individuals have tried it. And so it's really cutting across all socioeconomic platforms. It's like all sorts of people, seeing people in suits at work who normally go to the pizza place that's a 2-minute walk, but they like the one across town a little bit better, and they never have enough time to go there, so they're getting on a bike and riding to get across town a little bit further and a little bit faster. If you think about the way that it works in Ithaca, and I'm only talking about that because that's where I have all this data from, people drop their car off in the morning at one of the places to get service, they're getting on a bike and riding into town, they're getting that call at the end of the day that their car is ready, and they're jumping on bikes and going riding back out Route 13 to go pick up their cars. We're seeing all of that data show up. One of the other things that we're able to provide is our bikes are all GPS tracked. So within a week of actual use, we can lay out a GPS, we can lay out a map of the entire village, and we'll be able to see where every single bike has ridden. And when we do that with Ithaca, we're literally seeing bikes on every single street in the entire city. So planners and future planners who are trying to understand how cities work and how cities move, we're able to provide priceless data that can only be theorized or understood by somebody literally standing on a corner, like checking off every time a bike goes by. So we can provide a fully detailed map to villages and cities as they plan moving forward to show where people are actually riding. And so that helps create some best paths to build on, and it also just really enlightens us as to, wow, I never realized so many people at this time of day didn't have a better way than getting on a bike to get across town. So those are some of the things that we have seen in Ithaca. Watkins Glen is much shorter. We've only been there for 2 weeks. We're averaging somewhere around 50 rides a day with 50 bikes, so basically everybody's getting used almost every day. And their season doesn't really start until the end of next week, where the tourists begin to pour into town. And so we're expecting to see a big spike during that time. And certainly they have a few weekends where there's 70, 80,000 people that come to that little town for the weekend. So those will certainly be will be very busy. We staff each village. We have 2 people. We have a person in Watkins Glen every single day specifically looking after the bikes. They respond to distress calls, they respond to maintenance calls, they respond to anything that gets through to my phone or email. I dispatch people to go pick up bikes. When there's nothing pressing, their general job is to neaten them up, collect them, keep an eye where they all are. Through our operations app that we use, we can see where all the bikes are at any moment, and so it's very easy for us to find them and track them down and make sure that they're going where they're supposed to be going. In Ithaca, we currently have 3 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees doing basically the the same job as I just described.
I have a question.
Sure.
So, let's say I want to bike right now,
Mm-hmm.
where do I go to get it?
So if you have the app on your phone and you open up the app, it will show you the location of every bike. And so it'll basically show you the closest one that's to you, and you would basically walk and get
Go
that.
out and get it, and then
Yeah.
when you get off. just-
Wherever you are, if you were coming here for this meeting, you would basically put one like right in the parking lot over there, not blocking any of the roadways or pathways or sidewalks essentially. Near bike racks is always a good choice, but not on bike racks, because we don't need to lock our bikes to anything. We don't want to take away the space for people who have expensive bikes that want to bring them there and actually lock them up. But that's generally like a good area if you see a bike rack like right next to it, or if it has 20 spaces and there's no bikes there, it would probably be okay to leave one line bike in that spot.
So if I brought the bike here, there's no guarantee that bike will be there when I go out.
That's correct. It
It could be in Ithaca.
It could be, basically could be anywhere. It's a bike sharing service, and so all the bikes are able to be shared at any time. When you unlock the bike with your phone, there's a little lock on the back wheel that pops open and you ride. When you get there, you relock that. And that sort of logs you out from the ride and stops the clock for your getting charged for it. And as soon as you do that, that bike then shows back up on the map. So when somebody else wants to look for bikes, they will then see that one.
Because I saw one here in Trumansburg, just parked on somebody's front lawn, and I thought, well then.
Are they
We're
Ithaca bikes that
here.
are here?
I'm sorry?
Are those Ithaca bikes that are here currently?
Yes. Yes, there's been maybe a total of about 10 or 12 in the past couple of weeks that have come out here, most of which we've collected after a day and brought back.
So you have to go pick them up and take them back to somewhere in Ithaca?
Yep.
There's like a repository someplace?
No, there's no repository. We have, we worked with the city of Ithaca and specifically laid out, initially laid out what we thought would be 15 deployment points where we would bring bikes to. But we have corrected that as the data has shown. There's really like a few areas where people expect to find bikes. And so our job is basically to get bikes there all throughout the day. Whenever we collect them on the outskirts, we bring them to a few different spots that are the main hot spots.
That's interesting.
So if I wanted it to be there after my meeting, I could just not, I'm paying for the ride time.
Correct.
I don't have to plug it back in and give up that bike. until
Correct.
I'm ready to give it up.
That would mean leaving the bike unlocked while you're in this meeting,
Right.
which meant that if someone else just happened to come across it, they would find an unlocked bike that they would basically be able to now take, and now they're on your account. So the idea is that you don't leave them unlocked at any point. It's really a sharing service that takes a little bit of understanding and getting used to in terms of the concept that something that you use to get here may or may not be specifically available when you're done and on again. Through the use of accessibility and availability, if we had the right number of bikes here in town, even if that one wasn't here, there's probably one parked right on the main road that you'd be able to get within 30 seconds or a minute. That's the concept of how it works.
I have a quick question, I guess. What's the plan for the bikes come wintertime?
So essentially in the Northeast, we ramp our services way back in the winter. We are very flexible, so if we see that on Thursday a huge blizzard is coming, we'll collect bikes and bring them to more condensed areas so they're not in the way of things. But inevitably we also have days and weeks in February where it gets to be 70 degrees, and we can see those coming also and deploy bikes to better numbers. So if people want to go out and do something on those nice warm days, we have bikes available. Our goal is to have as many rides per bike per day as possible, and so the more prepared that we are and the more flexible that we are of all of those things, weather and conditions, the better that we can make that happen. We're seeing so much utilitarian use for people that are working and using them as transportation, and not just for recreation, and not just for having a little fun time, that we are expecting that during the winter time that those people will still be relying on those bikes at certain times of the day and night. And so we're certainly not going to pull them all off.
Can they be stolen?
They're all GPS tracked, so we can always find them, and you can steal anything for that matter.
I just wondered, because I thought we would keep somebody from just picking it up and taking it
The
somewhere.
GPS, and so that'll know where that
So
bike
you
is.
don't know where it is.
Yeah, they're all tracked. And so we've had almost no bikes stolen or purposely damaged. Out of the 300 that we've deployed in the 2 months in Ithaca, we've had literally less than 1% that get damaged right away. In some of the bigger cities that we worked, Ithaca was the first New York market that we opened up. I've since done 800 bike deployment in Yonkers, New York, and I just spent the last week in White Plains doing a deployment with another company as our competitor there, where we were going sort of head to head with the same number of bikes. The city wanted to kind of see how that would happen if there was direct competition. It went really well, and again, we saw amazing ride numbers, and people in general very pleased about the service, and no vandalism, or very, very little vandalism. Inevitably, you see a picture on the internet of a bike in the water somewhere. That bike has made it around the internet a lot faster. That's literally less than 1% of all of how the bikes get used, and so we're not too concerned overall with how that's gonna be.
When you sign out, do you have to sign a disclaimer just that you're riding at your own risk?
Yeah, so when you create an account, like you would create an account for anything, there's rules and regulations that nobody reads, but that everyone's supposed to read about what your responsibilities are going into the process, and certainly you have to, we assume, or we tell you within that process that you need to know your local rules and regulations, you need to follow them, and that you're supposed to wear a helmet, and that you're not supposed to ride on the sidewalks. Just driving in here, I saw a bunch of people biking along the sidewalks. It's kind of inevitable, people just do it, and one of the great things about Line Bike is that we appeal to real novice people, other people that would not otherwise own a bike or maybe haven't ridden one in years. And so there is a bit of a big learning curve, especially at the beginning when the bikes come out. People are riding for the first time in years, or maybe for the first time ever. And so there's a little bit of learning the rules and relearning the rules, and some community education that's required to make people understand, like, you know, there's bike paths, or you should ride with traffic, and you shouldn't be on sidewalks, and you know, all that kind of stuff. You see that in every city.
How many speeds are there?
So the bikes are 8-speed bikes. They're Dutch-style cruiser bikes. They have a very low down tube. I'm sorry, I don't have one with me. They have a very low down tube, so they're very easy to step on and off. And the seats are adjustable from 5'3" to 6'5" for your height. And they're kind of intentionally heavy. And so they're very sort of overbuilt in a way that we understand people are going to treat them like they're not their own, and so they might get a little bit harder use than if you went out and spent $3,000 on a bike. You probably treat it a little more carefully. All the parts on our bike are all custom made for our bikes, and they will not work with any other bikes. People occasionally steal grips or steal seats, and they get them home and think they can use them on their own bikes, but they don't fit on any other bikes.
Following up on the safety questions, so does the website just say you're expected to know how to do it, or do you include any links?
Yeah, so on our website are 3 great resources. One is how to line, one is how to park, and one is basically safety resources that show you all the hand signals and all the expected use, and all that information is available right there. Also in the app itself, there's a way that you can see the safety video and also request a very affordable, I think it's a $10 helmet if you don't have one, right through the app, and it can be debited right from your ride credits or right from your account that you've already set up. New York State law currently states that if you're over 14 years old, you do not need a helmet to ride a bicycle, and so we can't make people do that. We can only make them follow the rules, the laws that are already in place.
So what happens to the person that has a bike and goes to Wegmans or Aldi's, or they park their bike, they come out with their groceries, and there's no bike?
So that is essentially the most popular question that we get asked. And the fun answer is that you successfully shared a bike. Congratulations.
And you're screwed.
Well, you shouldn't be, because there should be another bike available, essentially. That's really the best way to see it. We've almost never come to a situation in the towns that have the right amount of bikes for the right amount of service, where you would come out and there would be not only no bike there, but no bike within like a 30-second walk or less.
You would take the person who just arrived and leave them.
Right.
But don't buy ice cream, I think you can.
Yeah, but that's what everybody wants to know. What happens when the bike that I brought there is gone? And so really there's nothing that you can essentially do about that. That's how it works, is that all the bikes are for everybody. There's no reservations. They're just first come, first serve. You just unlock it when you use it, lock it when you're done. If somebody else takes it, you just grab another one. They're all identical. They all work the same, and that's the idea behind the system. Any other questions?
Any board questions for Jeff? Yeah, I mean, I guess my question would be, what are you looking for from us? Because to me, it seems kind of like a no-brainer.
Sure. You got a bunch of stickers on there.
Oh, thanks.
We are either looking for sort of the go-ahead to just sort of let bikes come out here and see what happens, which will happen slowly, although once grassroots hits, I imagine that weekend specifically, bikes will definitely come out here because we are bringing probably 50 bikes just to the festival entrance there. And so we intend for people to shop and go back to their campgrounds and, you know, all the things that people do when they're not, you know, during the day and night. So we'll staff that. But another potential option is that we can actually sign an MOU, which I sent a sample to Mayor Hart as well, which basically states how we do what we expect in the village, and what we expect the village to provide us with, which is essentially nothing except use of the right-of-ways that already exist. You know, we would provide the bikes, we would provide all the staff to deal with them and all the maintenance required. And
right. So our end of the bargain is not picking your bikes up and like throwing them out.
Yeah,
When they're
exactly. That's exactly it. Is that they're understanding that they'll be here and that we're trying to get everyone to understand the best way to use them. That may or may not immediately happen. And in the meantime, while people are learning how to do it, we're not going to have to check in the dumpsters to see if that's what they are. Question?
Yeah, I have seen lots of bike share programs, and I've seen problems with leaving the bike anywhere you want. I mean, I don't think that will be a problem right away here, depending on how many bikes end up in Trumansburg. But I think it would be nicer if there were designated stations. At least some, you know, I've seen like...
So the bike share...
blown over bikes, you know, like bikes in the way, it's not a totally foolproof system, I think.
I couldn't agree more. It is not a foolproof system, nor has there been proven to be a foolproof system. The bike share universe started with docked bike sharing, which is specific spots where you pick up bikes and you rent bikes, and then when you're done, you bring the bikes back there. And that's been fine on some level. However, that's excluded many different kinds of people. You have to have a credit card account, mandatory to do that. You have to leave a deposit when you take those bikes. You also have to obviously find a docking station both at the beginning of your ride and at the end of your ride. So these things take away from the accessibility point that we're trying to make, as well as the convenience of the whole system where there can literally be one anywhere. And so it's sort of evolved away from that as a whole, and this dockless or dock-free sharing has become the new norm, or the new way that most cities want to see these bikes deployed. That being said, in the city of Ithaca, we are currently building what we're calling bike corrals, which are the exchange of one parking spot on the street for a bike corral, which is could either be nothing more than a painted parking space on the ground, or potentially some kind of like literally enclosure for bikes to be collected, which would work for not only my bikes, but also in Ithaca we're doing it as each corral that we build will be half for space for line bikes and half space for other people's bikes, to overall increase the space for people to store their bikes. There's never enough bike racks in the popular areas and those kind of things. So we can create some designated areas, but it's very difficult to enforce anyone taking a bike and bringing it to their house, or riding it to the farmer's market, or riding it to the pizza place, or the ice cream store, and leaving it right on the sidewalk in front of them. So that's certainly part of how the system will be used.
So if we were to come across a bike that was like in the sidewalk, we can, if anyone can kind of pick it up and move it up.
Yes, please do.
Okay.
That's part of, you know, we want to be part of the community. We want the community to participate in our program. We want to do everything that we can. We want to have an open line of communication. You guys will literally have my phone number. If there's a problem, you can call me and we get dispatched. In Ithaca, we average about 12 minutes from complaint to response. And so it's a very manageable system, and we're able to take care of any problems. So yes, that's the best way to deal with those kind of problems. So literally, if the bike is locked, you can pick up the back. You can pick up by the seat of the back wheel, and slide the bike out of the way and just move it. You know, or if it's falling over, just pick it up. Is really the best use.
So when you start out, you're obviously putting groups of bikes in different places.
Sure.
So I would assume like the farmer's market's one end, the school, fairgrounds, or
We can predetermine what those locations are. but our data will show where people are starting their trips from. And so we want to be flexible, and we want there to be flexibility in the community. We can say, look, listen, we put these bikes at the farmer's market, but only on Saturday mornings at 9 o'clock are people bringing bikes there. The rest of the week, there's no reason to really have any bikes there. People want them to go from, from this office to the pizza place or the coffee shop or a little bit further down to Atlas or wherever they're going. Even if it's short, a 10-minute walk is like a 3-minute ride, especially if you're taking the downhill direction.
So what I might suggest is, I don't have any objection to if line bikes end up here, we're certainly not going to impound them. But I think what might be interesting is if you would share, if you're willing to share the data analytics from grassroots, then we would get a sense of maybe, it's a busy weekend to pick a look at data, but kind of get a sense of where it's being used, and then we can decide.
Don't you think grassroots is I don't think that's even a viable weekend.
Yeah, that would be
I can tell you that we're going to do is they're going to go from there to where the cars are parked, and then they're going to go back. Or they're going to go there,
I would be curious.
have breakfast, and back to their cars.
Sure, true enough, but I would be interested to see that, because if it doesn't come into the village at all, then we'll know that, okay, that's an isolated incident, it doesn't help us make any decision. If we see that there's a lot of bike traffic into the village, and we hear anecdotally from businesses that we've got more foot traffic more bike traffic than we've ever had, because people never came to our restaurants during grassroots week, and now they are, and I think that would be interesting.
And the other thing that I would think is, as residents during grassroots, what a great thing to have.
Yeah, if the bikes are already here by that time, then
Yeah.
that's a great way to get to the festival. I don't have to worry about parking it.
I know how I deal with it, but
Just to also mention, we don't have to make any kind of essentially permanent arrangements at all. Everything can be like, let's bring them out here the week before grassroots, watch them for a week and see what happens, and if it turns out that it all works out, then we can bring more. Or if it turns out that nobody really uses them, then we'll pull them out. I mean, we want a working solution, and it doesn't make sense for us to have bikes here that aren't getting used, and it certainly doesn't make sense for a village to have bikes stored on the sidewalks that aren't getting used. Our data propagates every single night. At the end, at midnight, basically, our set closes for the day and shows us the total number of rides, total number of riders, and we're essentially a data company at the heart of what it is that we do. And so in 3 or 4 days, we will certainly have a lot of rides to look at, and we can decide, what we want to do at that point.
yeah, I think Porch Fest is this weekend.
Yeah,
Be here.
that's an anticipated,
exactly
one of our
what
business weekends in Ithaca will certainly be Porch Fest, and I didn't realize it was this weekend, but it's not out of the question that we could have bikes delivered here on Friday for sure. And then see what happens.
I would say do that.
Jump to
I think it's a great idea.
So I love the concept of bike sharing. I don't really have to be sold on it, but because it's something that I like, I naturally feel like I have to play devil's advocate a little bit. So I have a couple of questions. One being, have you learned anything from, when you get to towns or villages where maybe they lack like bike lane infrastructure? Because I don't think we've done a lot of that here. We have some narrow streets. You're not supposed to be on sidewalks. Main Street sees its fair share of 18-wheelers. So I'm just curious if you've seen anything, like how towns adjust or adapt to that?
Yeah, so we see 2 things. Number one, we see people riding on sidewalks when there's not proper bike lanes on busy roads. That's like the easiest to fault. And obviously, if the sidewalks are super busy, that becomes really difficult. If the sidewalks aren't that busy, it's probably not that big of a deal. And number 2, because like in Ithaca, we're seeing literally 500 or more rides a day, cars are noticing and they're being more careful. And when there's increased bike traffic, you take notice to that, and people have to adjust. And ultimately, as cities grow moving forward, I mean, you can look at Manhattan as an example. Times Square has thousands and thousands of bikes that go through there every day. Cars know how to deal with it, and they've made special space, and they've changed the routes because a lot more people can get themselves to where they need to be on bikes than one person per car, which tends to be what happens. I don't know specifically what the parking issues or lack thereof are here, but a spot that holds one car can generally hold 12 bikes. And so if you can make one person leave their car home and 12 people can get around town in alternative transportation, then that's kind of a win for everybody.
And I would second, the visibility of the line bike is so much better than the visibility of my bike. I would love everybody to understand their bikes out there, because I do ride on the road. And don't have the strength that I used to, and struggle with those hills, and still, but, you know, it would be nice to have that mindset here.
They're intentionally bright.
Do they have
There's
lights?
always pain.
I'm sorry, what was that question?
Do they have lights on them for?
Yes, so for code and for all laws, they have not only the proper reflectors on each wheel on the front and backs, but the front wheel itself turns a generator hub that turns on an LED light in the front and the back. And sometimes if you park the bike, you'll notice that those lights stay on for a few minutes after the bike is parked until the generator goes out. There's a solar panel at the bottom of the basket. That solar panel charges a battery that's in the down tube. And that battery runs the electronics that run the basically 3G connectivity signal, so the bikes are online, as well as the locking mechanism that you run, that you control with your phone.
What does, in a standard MOU, what are we looking at for liability? I mean, when I go rent a car, they ask me if I want to use my insurance or yours.
Sure. We are covered and we have insurance for every single individual ride. The villages are not required to put up any kind of additional insurance. And that's all. Your Mayor already has that. He can share that with you. I sent the sample one that we used for Long's Line, but they're basically all the same. We would share with you our certificate of liability and our insurance information as well if we choose to go that route.
So if I'm parked on the street, someone's line bike tips over, hits my car, scratches it, who do I call?
You would basically call your insurance company for that, and they would decide what to do. We haven't any situations where there's been damage to line bikes, the insurance companies have called us, we let those all go. And you know, there's been a few accidents here and there, nothing major luckily, nothing out of it at all in terms of that. But you can read the details of all that in the sample.
And where do they go for maintenance? Do they stay local?
Yeah, all maintenance is done in our warehouse, in our workshop, which is actually currently located in Lansing, just north of Ithaca. Kind of far from here, but we're deploying in Ithaca. And what our plan would be if there were bikes that were put in maintenance mode, if any individual user comes across a bike that has something broken on it, they can tag that bike right in the app. That bike then goes into maintenance mode, which means it disappears from the map, so no other person will be able to see that bike as a choice. If they happen to just stumble across it and go to unlock it, they get a message that says somebody has reported this bike is in maintenance mode, and unfortunately you can't ride it, you have to find another one. And then we get alerted that a bike is in maintenance mode, and we can come take care of it.
Hypothetically, if a village has a bike repair shop on its main street,
Yeah.
could it possibly be utilized for one of those repairs?
That cannot be. We have all 100% proprietary parts and tools that are used in our system, and so everything is done in-house and handled in-house. To answer that question,
Trying.
yep,
Local shops.
we have found with local shops in a lot of villages, and we just saw a lot of examples of this on White Plains, people that have thought about maybe buying a bike and haven't had a good reason to, rent the line bike a couple times, realize it's actually a really great way to get across town, and then go out and buy a bike for themselves and realize that they can use that as a viable means of transportation. And so we actually are seeing a lot of increases in many towns as opposed to what people think would be the opposite. Again, the $1 per 10-minute ride service isn't really a service that any bike shop or bike rental company is offering. It would be a hassle for them to rent a bike for 10 minutes, obviously. So we kind of have a different little niche that we're going in.
I'll stop the inquisition there. I'm sure we want to move on tonight. I can follow up with more questions.
Yeah, you have my email address. I'd be happy to share that with any member of the board here, and you can certainly email me any specific questions or anything else that comes up that you haven't addressed. I'll be happy to answer any of those individually.
We do have the Blacklands MOU.
Yeah.
Can I move that we authorize Warden, after all questions are answered, if it is positive, to go forward with a memorandum of understanding so that we don't have to wait another month?
I would second that. Okay, well, we have a motion and a second. Any additional
Before
discussion?
or after this Friday?
Also, yeah, Friday. Very good objective.
Yeah, I mean, we have bikes in the warehouse that we can deploy, and we can talk about the specifics here in the next few days, but that Porch Fest is like, could it be a better use of it?
perfect
what
launch.
I ride a bike to it every year.
I mean, would this be an actual launch or a pilot program or?
Launching the pilot program.
You can,
I mean, it seems like a great time for a pilot program, but for,
Yeah.
I don't know.
it's all the same to us, frankly, and so whatever works and however you want to spin it, however you want to call it, and whatever kind of press release you want to do with it, or anything is all, essentially all good. We want to get bikes into the community, we want to get people riding bikes, is the bottom line. So if that's going to be a time when people are going to be milling about and collecting and walking from porch to porch or street to street, seems like it would be a good time to put bikes out there and let them certainly see what happens at the very least.
Is there a bike to people ratio that you use?
No, there's not. Every town, every city, every village that we've come to has been different, and there's not really a working model that gives us an answer to that. Again, our goal is to have people riding bikes, and so through looking at our data and through flexibility, we increase and decrease as needed. We started to launch 500 bikes in Yonkers, and we had like 1,400 rides on like the first day, and so we're already up to about 800 bikes there. The need is there, and people are using them, so we keep deploying bikes almost every morning. We put in a dozen or so fresh bikes out, sometimes 20.
So how many might be available for Porch Fest?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't want to give you the solid answer right now. We can certainly talk about that, but my guess is somewhere between 40 and 50 might be the right amount for this weekend.
So your thought is to have this MOU signed by Friday?
That was my thought. That's what I didn't want to talk.
In my view, if we could substitute Trumansburg, I mean, that was fine, we're completely identified.
Yeah,
All
that's
the
the
stuff
idea.
is in place, I mean, to me, it looks very good. I mean, maybe pass by guy quickly, just see if there's gaps, if you feel like that's necessary.
Yes.
But the point of that MOU is to basically make sure that it's known that you basically have nothing to do except let us do what we're doing.
I mean, it really
Yeah,
sounds like our
sure,
shirt is
it's
around
around
me,
me,
it's
it's
around
around
everything.
We have a motion and a second on the table. Is there any other comment or discussion?
So will this agreement have terms in terms of range, or is it just kind of open,
We can terminate it at any time, but delivery ready notice was the other critical part.
Correct. Yeah. Again, as a community player and as wanting to make something that works for everybody, if it's not working, then we're not, it doesn't make sense.
I guess that was my question, is it lock us in for a year of liability?
No, it's not really like that. We will continue to operate it as long as it's a benefit to the community and as long as people are using it. If you want to end it and I can show, and our data is saying, well, 2,000 people are riding your bikes every day, like you're probably not going to want to end it in the first place. And so it'll make sense to either continue the relationship or not, based on the data and based on the performance of my team and my crew, which has been pretty stellar so far.
Do live bikes go south for the winter?
We are in a total of about 50 markets around the country, and about currently 12 campuses. And our goal is to, by September, when everyone goes back to school, be on about 3 times as many campuses as that.
So hypothetically, we deploy for Porch Fest, are we getting a staff member this weekend?
I mean, that would be the most difficult part, given my current constraints in my schedule, but certainly there will be somebody out here, to deploy the bikes, who would then be present to answer questions during the first day, if that turns out to be Saturday or Friday. But you'll basically be getting brand new bikes, so there won't be any maintenance issues. There's a little bit of learning curve with people downloading the app for the first time, and my guess is that there's enough people out here who have already tried it, and if they're given the numbers, that they'll probably be able to spread the word. We have a few codes that I think are active that we can share also to give people some free unlocks initially. First ride is always free to unlock it anyway when you download the app, so people can just try it.
And I would, if you're looking for initial deployment, I would suggest that we are at the farmer's market at that end of town. Simply because there's everybody from that end of town needs transportation if they're going to do anything to get
The bus
it.
stop right down there is probably gonna be fine.
Pardon me?
The bus stop right there, I mean, there's so much traffic there in the morning.
Right.
Yes,
And even if they're coming from Ithaca to go to Porch Fest, they're getting off a bus anyway.
Yeah.
Would this require an additional MOU with the school district? Would we have to not be on their land? How does that work?
The MOU would be between them.
Yeah, that's what I mean, yeah.
deploy them there specifically. The Ithaca High School seniors last Friday between midnight and 1:30 in the morning rode 85 line bikes to the parking lot and parked them off as their senior prank. It was more of a prank on us. But again, community engagement is key for us, and so if people are wanting to do fun stuff or do whatever, that's great.
So you don't need caffeine, do you?
Yeah. Yeah, there's always something going on. And it's just like, I can open up my phone at any minute, I'm like, I wonder who's riding now. And we don't have the identity of any of the riders, but on my map, all the people that are actually riding are like show up as little moving icons. And so you can literally just watch them like scatter across the screen. Every time you refresh it, they move all around. So it's kind of fun.
To know why you didn't ride up here.
Well, because I was playing a softball game at Cass Park, and I literally had my last at bat at 7:20 and came directly here, and only had 19 minutes to make it, and so I couldn't make another bus.
She can't help herself.
That's all right. But I rode in White Plains in 4 days. I rode about 50, almost 60 miles, just going around the city all day long. We balancing bikes and just kind of like seeing how you could really function in a city of that size. You know, on a bike as your main vehicle, and it was actually great. That city was really nice. I'd never been there before. Really quite nice, actually.
I'm sure your encryption is top notch because you're connecting my credit card to my traveling habits.
Yes. Again, we are mostly at the heart of everything. We're a Silicon Valley data company, and so our code and our encryption and our app are absolutely top notch. We are like the #5 overall travel app in all of iTunes. App Store, and so we have really high ratings.
Who do they sell it?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry,
She was asking, who do you sell it?
nothing is sold. All of our actual user data is held by a third party, so we can have the data of where the bikes are, and we have the user data, but the two aren't associated. So even though I can tell you that bike number 565434 was at Stewart Park at this time, I can't know who was on that bike at that time. That data is held separately.
So we have a motion and a second. I would attach a friendly amendment to that pending a cursory review by council. Take a look at it.
We were going to combine with it, right?
May or may not see it. All right, then,
Is there any reason to add, sorry, is there any reason to add a review point, which we review the data?
Please do, because that usually is pretty favorable. We can launch on Friday in 2 weeks. We can have a meeting where anyone that you want to, we
At least maybe after grassroots, just look at it.
I'd love to see.
Sure.
Yeah,
Just discuss.
The data's fascinating. It really is. It's one of the best parts.
I would say for our August meeting, then.
Okay.
Second Monday, 'cause that'll get a couple of months here and then grassroots.
Okay, yeah, that would be a great time to give total numbers. And in the meantime, I can send you just some random updates of, oh, we've crossed the 5,000 mile list or whatever we get to. With 50 bikes, it probably won't be that.
That's
but-
awesome.
I've actually.
We've already had one at the village office. So.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so there's been, like I said, about a dozen or so that have come out here on the bus. and-
I've been on a trip too, and I was wondering who's living in the woods.
And of course, the Black Diamond Trail, you know, is a key connection. And if the piece between Taganic and the village here, you know, is completed in the next few years, certainly that would be a great, you know, way to get from point A to point B. We see a ton of, you look at the map, there's always a ton of bikes that are being ridden up there to the falls.
All right, then, so we have a motion and a second. If there is no further discussion then, all in favor of me signing the MOU after review by council, preferably by this Friday, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So I'll look for a copy of that with Trumansburg filled in.
Yep, it'll basically be exactly the same, with essentially one word difference. Yeah, I'll have that to you in the morning.
Good. Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And again, you know, just to close, it's got to be an open book. It has to work for everybody. Any questions that you think of between now and then, you have my email address. Just send me a message. I'll be happy to give you as many answers as I can. Good.
Thank you. All right.
Good night, guys. Thank you.
Hang on. Yeah.
Ben from Fire.
So not much to report this month, just to say, trying to set up a meeting with you, Matt, and Jason about moving forward with the fire hall and whatever we're going to do there. That's about it.
So, focus on youth, I did go to the MOU meeting we had talked about, which is a meeting with T-Bird Community Rec. Hopefully everyone's familiar with that group. If they're not, I would strongly suggest looking at them. But their group is trying to find funding and build sports facilities and recreation facilities. So we met the town, village, which was just me and Liz. Thomas met with a number of members from T-Bird Community Rec, talked about putting together an MOU that would basically, what does it do? The idea is to structure a couple quarterly meetings, or four meetings throughout the year where we would work together to create a recreation plan. And a lot of this, I should point out, Nancy, your email was very helpful in structuring that sort of the conversation. It started there, and that was very helpful for all involved. I think that was good. But so we'll have quarterly meetings. We will, and so obviously this MOU is in the works. I don't have it. Tanner's writing it up right now, but I reiterated our willingness to act as a fiduciary agent in the event of a grant that being passed through municipal partners and grant. And that's really what it is. So it's just a basic MOU that we want to help them. We want to work together where possible. We're not financially obligated or anything in that way, but just, reiterating our support as we've already done with that letter. The other thing that I wanted to point out on youth is that there's a new, well, it's not new, so there's a federal requirement that our camp counselors for summer rec all have this 5-hour training that we have for many, many years gotten an exemption from. This year, we did. It's something that it's applied for every year and sort of summarily granted, and this year it just wasn't. So our counselors weren't necessarily prepared. We hadn't been required to take this training. It's one of those, I hesitate to call it silly, but it's not an essential piece of, I'll leave it there. It's not essential. Or maybe it is so essential that everyone already knows that kind of thing. But in any case, so Janice Johnson, who works for the County Youth Services, put a huge amount of effort into trying to get funding and trying to sort of, make it so that we didn't have to pick up that tab for every one of our counselors who doesn't have that training already. And I just got an email this morning, right? Was it this morning, Lindsay? That she was successful. So I haven't talked to Tommy yet, but hopefully we can do that. And the critical thing about that training is it makes our campers eligible for DSS scholarships. So without it, we're not. And hopefully now we can be without having to put that on ourselves. But yeah, if any of you know James. Or Jade, probably know. But that's what all I got.
Okay, any questions for Ben? DPW water sewer.
I do not have anything new that we haven't already covered.
Okay. Keith, police TCOG and TACC.
So police, of course, as we just learned, we're in the search for a new chief for the first time in 4 decades. So it's going to be an undertaking for the Trumansburg Area Chamber of Commerce. Added a new member last month, 94 active members right now. Picked up grants recently for Winterfest. Marketing and distribution grants for Central and Western New York. They are discussing the idea of creating an economic development committee and are proposing perhaps I take a lead on that committee. Have not decided whether that's a good idea or a bad idea for our workload, but we'll find out. We'll talk more in 2 days from now. That'll be on Wednesday. Working on a signs if you have a bid in the marathon. And I think that's about it. One thing I'll probably say for our July meeting is just some takeaways from a workshop I was at. Binghamton today with regards to chamber support, local business support. It was a workshop for basically learning how to go after state funding for business development and job attraction, a number of things. So I won't go deep on that. It was a lot today. And so process my thoughts, put some notes down, and then present more in July. TCOG, the two main things continue to be everyone's mad at Spectrum. So Spectrum's taking away channels, and so a lot of municipalities around the county are looking for ways to increase competition, bringing perhaps other cable providers, find ways to bring them in at better rates and better speeds, and what that infrastructure might look like. And another, something that hits close to home for us is municipalities need help with planning. So a lot of municipalities, they don't need a planner full-time, but it's hard to find one part-time, it's hard to afford it. Apparently, in the past, municipalities around the county have all put in to share a planner, and at one point they decided it wasn't worth it, so they stopped. And now there's discussions about perhaps bringing that back. Interestingly enough, some of the things I learned today might help fund a position like that, I think. So we'll continue to talk about that. One thing we talked a little bit about as a board is this charitable donations for municipalities. There was Charlie Kruzinski, the Associate VP of University Relations from Cornell, was at this last TCOG meeting, and that came up. So this guy, Charlie, he basically, his job is to be the liaison between Cornell and our state government. But in doing that, they help out a lot of business around the county as well. Something that would probably be good for us to get to know. But he basically said the rumor is that the IRS is not going to allow these deductions to happen if people try to do them. So kind of don't hold your breath kind of a thing. So our governor might be really disappointed in how that all rolls out. But yeah, I think with some of our needs here as a village, this office at Cornell would be worth our time, I think, to get to know, because they do a lot of advocating for, they're willing to do a lot of advocating for people around the county, I think. And I think we have some needs that would probably be worthy of their time. Another interesting thing, last thing I'll just mention that came up is talking about TCAT, and the discussion has started. It might be far-fetched. The discussion has started about TCAT going fare-free, and that obviously can bring its challenges, I'm sure, but it's a discussion they're having. How would the community allow some sort of a tax? Would it be institutional or business support? I guess that the discussion actually arose about 10 years ago. Could be state money used for a rider per mile basis. So there's a lot of, this is obviously going to be a complicated discussion, but it's an interesting discussion for them to have, especially for places like us that are a little further out. I think it could be an interesting development. I think that's it.
Did you say you had anything on the safe spot?
I don't. I haven't really received anything back, so I'm going to continue to try to make inroads with communicating with Candor, who seems to be the people to talk to on this.
If you need help in the clerk's office there, I can help you.
Okay, yeah, I'll follow up with you. Good idea.
Any questions for Keith? All right, item number 10 on the agenda, we did not have any correspondence directed specifically to this board since our last meeting. And that brings us to item number 11, old business.
Excuse me, no, it's of correspondence with Ken. Ken, Peter Street, Dorsey Hill. He did send us data. Before.
Last
No, Kathy was before.
Ken, was after? Oh, I didn't see anything from Ken. Did I?
Yeah, well, we did. Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
good point.
sorry, I don't think I saw it, so I wouldn't know.
Okay, maybe to just the board members to comment on that. Keith, were you able to have that conversation with the chief? I want to get that on the record if we can.
We did.
Yeah, and his recommendation is that we do reinstitute and change the placement, from what I understand, of the stop sign at the bottom of, it's Lake Street, right? Or there's a grocery hill there.
Well, so this is actually, in rereading Ken's email, I was sort of embarrassed to realize that when I've thought about this, I've always thought about it as a stop sign at the bottom of the grocery hill, which is a terrible idea and sends you into oncoming traffic. Whereas what Ken was suggesting is a stop sign coming the other way from Lake Street, so after you cross, and that makes a huge difference.
That's where it was the last one.
Yeah, we clarified so much more with the chief, and he was saying that, yeah, it would not be stopping downhill traffic.
Right. He said the difference between where it was placed the last time and where it is being placed this time is this time it will be past the bridge.
Right.
Prior to this, it was on the bridge's property. And it was closer, it was before the bridge.
But that was before the bridge was rebuilt, like that was.
I don't think that was the case. I think that something came up about it being too near the intersection or something like that. That seems to not be an issue at this point. Our direction has changed, and we will be placing, based on the chief's recommendation, I'd like to propose that we replace that stop sign.
So it will be coming down Lake Street.
Okay.
Except it's almost going back up at that point.
It's before the intersection.
Basically to the end of the bridge. You cross the bridge and there's a stop sign there.
I think we should try that. I mean, I was really embarrassed when I realized that I had been thinking about it completely backwards.
Oh, you thought it was.
I was trying to imagine stopping going down the hill, and it just was the worst idea.
Well,
possible.
it was the same problem for the DPW going down the other way. When it has to come down the street. It's the same exact issue. You just don't feel like the grade's the same, but it is.
You're stopping. Well, we'll see how it goes. I'm in favor of this outcome.
Okay. And I said that I would go along with anything that the chief.
I would say he's enthusiastic about putting that in.
This,
You want to make a resolution?
I would like to move that we place a stop sign at the bottom of Lake Street, past the bridge, just past on the right-hand side.
I'll second.
So I will confirm in the morning whether
What?
we take it.
I don't know, like I said, from what I've gathered from the past, I'm not sure how much good placing a stop sign there is with the interruption that's going to put on traffic there. I feel like there's probably, with the school traffic in the morning, when you are putting a stop sign there that's going to interrupt that flow. Just from what I've seen and what I've heard from the other guys that they've seen, I feel like that may wind up causing more problem than helping. I guess without seeing it, I don't remember there ever being a stop sign there before, ever, but I guess that doesn't say much. But I guess it's just wait and see.
You're going away from the
Yes, yeah, I understand the direction.
There's not.
But with how far back still you're stopping, if you're planning on putting a stop sign just on the other side of that bridge, the visibility from coming down still isn't going to allow you, unless you're creeping. I mean, I know you're trying to.
You're talking about coming down from Lake Street, but
yes,
we're talking about going up. That when we come down,
you come down.
and we're going to turn left, we can't see.
Right. Oh, yeah.
However, if there's a stop sign there, you will be able to see someone there.
I mean, so to be clear, the stop sign is going at the intersection.
Yes,
It's not
correct.
contact, so
Coming down from Lake Street, or coming from Main Street down Lake Street,
Right,
that's where you're gonna stop, it's just past the bridge.
yes. And it's only on one side.
Yes, so you're not stopping traffic coming down Dorsey Hill.
That's correct.
So the traffic that's coming down Dorsey Hill is where you have the visibility problem.
That's
More
correct.
so than anywhere.
That's correct.
And you're not stopping them. But the traffic coming up, you're gonna stop.
Right, so that if people are turning left when they're coming down
Correct.
Dorsey Hill, they can see them at the stop
And
sign.
they have the,
They
have the right of way.
That's correct.
okay, I mean, I get that that's the, the traffic coming back from school that way, I'm afraid when we start backing it up, that's not,
It will never back up that far.
well,
I can't imagine.
there's a lot of.
I've driven this a few times, I was trying to like recreate this Zapruder film here, and
I guess it's
I can see where it's valuable.
I'm concerned about the effect.
And maybe what we're doing is we're putting in a stop sign that we'll reevaluate again, because
Yeah.
that's exactly what happened the last time.
Yeah,
Is we put it in, and then the police chief actually had it removed,
right.
and it may have to happen again, but we'll see.
Go with that.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah.
Well, it's something, part of this was the assumption that like some of that brush was going to be cleared.
Yes.
It's not getting cleared now, no one's clearing it. No one-
Oh, yeah, we were gonna clear it last week, but, like I said, the brush guys came in unexpectedly and we didn't get.
I can tell you that I drove it at least 4 or 5 times after our discussion the last time. And when my husband drove it, we both looked at it, we don't understand why people can't see. But that's
Right.
not our issue.
Yeah, the brush.
I am doing this for the benefit of the community, and they feel that there's this need.
Okay. One thing we'll have to clarify, we may need to amend local law to add the stop sign. So when we do that, this stop sign won't go in until we do that.
You have to amend a local law to put in a stop sign?
Although it's not what the traffic law dictates where the stop signs are, so we may have to amend that. I'll double check that in the morning.
Okay.
So if we do this resolution, we'll remove. In the meantime, what was the second?
It was correspondence with Debbie and Keith.
So we have a motion and a second to add a stop sign at the bottom of Lake Street headed north on the right-hand side after the bridge. All in favor of that, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? All right. I'll check on the law tomorrow. I think we need to amend
All right.
the streets law to do that. Back to item 11, old business. First item under old business is the Comp Plan and Zoning Revision Committee appointment. So as previously announced, we are tasking a committee which will work in conjunction with a professional planning firm who will do the heavy lifting in terms of drafting and language of revising our 2008 comprehensive plan, and then subsequent to that, rewriting our 2012 or amending our 2012 zoning. The committee will, previously announced, the committee will consist of a member from each of the 3 village boards, our code enforcement officer, and our zoning officer when we have one. The members from the 3 boards include Scott Sheedley from the zoning board, Ben Darfler from the village board, and Jessica Giles from the planning board, who will be the chair of this committee. The members from the community that we've been chatting with, discussing with, and have now settled on naming are going to include Kathy Klemperer, Rachel Giordano, Tom Pepe, Steph Bailey, who's also from the Tompkins County Chamber of Commerce, and David Breeden. I am planning to work with Jessica to schedule our first meeting probably sometime in later this month or sometime in July, depending on people's schedules. The timeline or tentative timeline, and I'm going to have a page on the website with all of this information, but the tentative timeline that I'm envisioning and that I've shared with Jessica is that the next item on old business talks about the RFP for this professional firm. I'd like to have those responses back within a month or 5 weeks or so, at which time this board can begin a review of those responses, but the committee will also participate in reviewing those responses, assuming we get a healthy number. By August, I would like to award the contract to the professional firm, and then through the remainder of August and September, the professional firm and the committee can work together to plan their strategy. Part of that strategy I'm suggesting would include an initial community forum, modeled after what the town of Ulysses did, as well as what the village did back in 2006 and 2007. Community forum would engage members of the community to talk about various aspects of the comp plan, what it looked like, what it currently looks like, and what it might need to look like going forward. If that first community forum can occur in October, that's aggressive, but that would be very nice. Between then November and January, the planning firm would be allowed to do what planning firms do. They can collate that data, they can do surveys of the community and whatnot. Fast forward to spring of 2019, I would like to see sometime between February and April, a second and possibly a third community forum workshop type gathering. And those community forums are really where the committee plays a very important role in terms of not only publicizing the forums, facilitating them, putting them together, and so forth. Summer of 2019 is when, using all of the data that the planning firm has gathered, including the information gathered through these community forums, then they can begin to actually draft language of the revised comp plan. This summer and early part of the fall of 2019 is when we would hopefully have a draft comp plan to look at, for this board to look at, for the community to look at, probably several public meetings to discuss and flesh out what's there, what's changed since 2008, if anything. And if all goes according to this very tentative timeline, we might be able to adopt a new comp plan in the fall or winter of 2019, which would then lead to review and revision of zoning in winter of 2019 through the spring of 2020. Again, the committee plays a very important role in working with the professional organization, professional planning firm to do that, while the planning firm does the tedious part with respect to the language. End of summer or fall of 2020 is when we might, in theory, have a draft revised zoning ordinance for public review. I expect that process to take anywhere from 6 to 9 months of public input, looking at the zoning, what's changed, what's different from 2012, how did the committee and the planning firm arrive at the conclusions that they arrive at, and of course this board is the only board that can pass zoning, so we would have to be comfortable with whatever is written. And then if all of that were to fall into place, then we might actually have a revised zoning ordinance sometime in the winter of 2020, 2021. So we are looking at 30 months to 3 years at quite a pace. Whether or not that pace is held to is anybody's guess. So those are the members of the committee. Next item under old business is the actual RFP, which is in the Dropbox for you all to look at if you haven't already. You've all reviewed it. I would like to get the RFP.
Yes, sir. That's not bad.
Turn the air back.
It's coffee. Really? You're gonna do that on the video? Really?
The RFP, I would like to issue tomorrow morning, if the board approves it tonight. Technically, the date of issue would be tonight. The RFP requests a professional planning firm to submit proposals by Friday, July the 13th, so just over 4 weeks. And it spells out in the RFP what the scope of the project is, working with the committee to review and revise the comp plan, and from their reviewing and revising the zoning ordinance. My plan is to have this RFP uploaded to the New York Planning Federation site where they offer a place for RFPs to be uploaded, and then have those proposals come back. Hopefully we'll get a lot to choose from by July the 30th. If anyone has any comments on the RFP, I know you've all seen a draft of it. So then I would entertain a motion to accept this draft RFP and put it out for bid proposal. Motion, we have a second. Second. Motion and a second. Any discussion on the draft RFP?
I did one point edit just to point out in the zoning ordinance, where it says, it talks about parking design standards and also road design standards, because I know that's come up quite a bit in the conversations. We just add something to say roads or streets in there.
And which section?
This is under zoning ordinance on page 4. I had previously just said about the middle of the paragraph says changes to definitions related to parking design standards. I just added road and parking design standards.
Okay.
That's quite a bit in the process. Streets is fine. Yeah, streets are real bad. If I need to make a choice, I'll just say.
No, I was just making sure I understood what you were saying.
Yeah.
Good night. Good night.
Okay. Any additional changes or edits or modifications? All right, then hearing none, all in favor of releasing this RFP with edits, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Put it out tomorrow with edits. We tabled item C under old business, item D, Maxam Solar Informational Meeting. So I just wanted to get a sense from the board of what you all would like to do. Maxam is requesting, and of course we understand their model is a rental solar farm model. They're requesting an opportunity to do a community informational meeting. Ideally, they would like the village to help facilitate it. They are willing to work with other individuals. My thought is if the village is going to facilitate it, then we should probably try to coordinate with Cornell Cooperative Extension and Renovus. If we don't want to do that piece of the work, then I see our choices as either telling them thanks but no thanks, or you can do it all on your own in space. And the question would be, would we let them use a firewall?
I think we should do that. And whether it's this whole board or just me or just one of these guys who both offer to take over that project.
Do which, the first?
Yeah, just support it, do a Renovus, you know. I think that's the way to do it. I mean, we still need, in order to get that grant, we still need a couple people still hanging on. I mean, it's a good community service ultimately, and both these programs are good, so it doesn't hurt to get people out.
Did you just volunteer to facilitate that?
I volunteered to take on the responsibility of finding someone.
The solar tompkins people still exist.
Yeah.
And I imagine, would have the contacts needed to pull people together if you wanted to draw.
So did you just volunteer to start an email chain?
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually a monthly, to be entirely honest with you, but yes, I know.
Well, that takes care of that.
So that was Ben volunteer?
That was Ben. Ben Carter.
Ben Carver. You want to make sure we get that clear, Mr. Carver.
What? Oh, I thought
All right. Well, that takes care of that then.
All right.
Item number 12, new business. The only thing I have is for review and discussion. Because I don't actually know where this is going to go until tomorrow morning. So Grassroots, as you know, has purchased the parcel of land behind Smith Woods and Chursay, and they're hoping to do some things there. The Tompkins County Health Department is requiring them to make available to anyone who is on that piece of land potable water. They haven't already yet said potable water except from one fire hydrant that the village owns adjacent to that property. So through some back and forth, we've come up with the idea of how the village might make that water available to grassroots for a charge. There's a meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning with grassroots and the health department to kind of talk through that. One sticking point is that the village would not be responsible for the distribution of the water on grassroots property. They would simply be tapping into the fire hydrant. I don't know what that means for how they would distribute it, but that's their issue, not ours. So for discussion is how we want to proceed with this. Would we want to authorize me to sign the agreement if things go well with the health department and grassroots? How, what role should the village play other than being a supplier of water?
We've already been through this resolution. The fact that there is a backup kit needed that's $1,500, that we already own the meter that we could put on is fine. The one thing that's not in here was something that I have heard about, maybe fencing around it so that it could be just wasn't readily accessible for people to mess with. But that's where we stop, is right at the hydrant and the meter. So what goes from there, whatever the hoses are, or how we're going to distribute the water is up to them.
So I imagine that the chances of this are hopefully absolutely tiny, but in the event that there was a fire and they had to tap that fire hydrant for some reason, is there a clause that would, or is there a need for one? I mean, that's probably a question for the health department.
No, it's in their item number 10.
Oh,
it's the 10, number 10 under there for us. So the village reserves the right without penalty to the village or recourse by grassroots to limit, restrict, or otherwise curtail water usage.
And then, I mean, it has
included
water needs, kind of.
Water needs reduced by emergency. Health department hasn't seen this. Oh. So this is conceptually from the village. Are we comfortable with this type of agreement? If the health department, my understanding is that they're primarily looking for the volume, how much water can be supplied. So I don't know what the health department's opinion of this is. I want to know tomorrow. This has seen guys' computer screen and he doesn't have any issues with it.
Is pricing in there?
They are paying a meter, the outside rate meter fee plus rate and a half. So basically our current standard outside user rate. They are also reimbursing the village for the cost of a backflow prevention kit at the fire hydrant, which they are aware of the cost and aren't in love with it, but
And they sold spots, sold camping on the
I imagine at this point they're probably not lined up the shovels and all those little things, that go into orchestrating the road. I'm sure there's a lot of those.
that was a lot going on in the prayer. That's a lot to take on.
so then we can either, we actually do have a need of a second meeting this month, so we can either address this based on tomorrow's meeting at our second meeting this month, if that's acceptable. The only other alternative I can think of is to get it until July.
I can't believe they could have waited till now.
Yeah.
So
It's been a long life discussion.
I don't know that they intentionally waited.
So what do they do? We do
more fire when they have 150 people camping. Or
It's already kind of drying up out there, so.
In terms of providing water, there shouldn't be any lack of water. We never ran out of water last year with how dry it was. It's still coming from the new source. We haven't had any reason to believe that there will be any lack of water that we can provide. And the main reason they're going this way is because without a water district to build them through, they can't tap into that line yet. So this is until there's a water district formed and then people can start tapping on that line. So it's not necessarily because of worrying about lack of water.
It's one hydrant in the system.
Right.
Yeah.
And the water's already there. It's just they can't tap
And
it.
they already use the water on the fairgrounds itself. There's another hydrant on the fairgrounds itself, so.
Yeah,
I don't know what they did for water on the Agard Road property, but
I don't know what happened.
yeah, I don't know.
They have tankers, don't they, like?
Yeah,
large
there's no
holding-
well on that
Yeah,
property.
right.
There's
It's
a
large.
big water in.
When thirsty.
Nobody's drinking the water.
Right.
So, I'm okay either way. If you feel like it's maybe goes well, Mark, I'd like to rather be assigned.
I am as well. I don't think, I think we probably have to make some changes and it'll still come back. I'm sure the Department of Health is gonna, they never do anything straightforward, so. So I move that we authorize Word to go ahead and sign this MOU if things work to our advantage at the meeting with DOH and restaurants tomorrow.
Second. Motion and a second. Any discussion?
If it needs counsel, we'll take it up next.
Do you want somebody from the water department after the meeting tomorrow?
If you're available, you or John,
Yeah, what time is it?
10 a.m. at the Legion. All right, then all in favor of allowing me to sign this as written, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? All right. Take that tomorrow.
Excuse me.
The heat.
What is up with that?
There you go.
Okay, item number 13 is approval of abstracts. Pay some bills, I hope.
We'll start with Mary's.
Yes. Start with May, let's see. Number 13, general fund abstract in the amount of $203,426.12.
I move that we take from the general fund $203,426.12.
Second. Motion and a second. Any discussion on this general fund abstract? If not, then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Next up, we have our EMS billing abstract in the amount of $18,437.70.
I move that we pay $18,437 $437.70 from the EMS billing.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, then all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have our water fund abstract in the amount of $18,123.59.
I'll move, we pay $18,123.59 from the water fund.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Sewer fund, $18,408.51.
I am so happy, I'm going to propose that we pay $18,480.51 from the sewer fund. This is the cheapest these bills have been in years.
We have a motion, we have a second? Second. Isn't any discussion on the sewer fund then? All in favor of paying it, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Capital projects, safe routes to schools, sidewalk project in the amount of $2,111.81.
I move that we pay $2,111.81 from the capital project, safe routes to school.
Motion, we have a second.
Second.
There's no discussion then, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, abstentions. Capital improvement water well project in the amount of $6,286.58.
I move that we pay $6,286.58 for the capital improvement water well project.
Second.
Motion and a second. Getting close to close, I think.
Yes. Are we, we're going to close these this month?
I think they said September. But we gotta be getting close. If there's no additional discussion, then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Capital improvement wastewater treatment plant project, $2,965.30.
I move that we pay $2,965.30 on the capital improvement wastewater treatment project.
Motion in a second, and this is also getting close to close out. There's no discussion then, all in favor, please say aye. Opposed, abstentions. Last but not least, on this set, trust and agency abstract $1,189.09.
I move that we pay $1,189.09 from the trust and agency.
Motion, we have a second.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. And we have another abstract from
June.
today. General fund abstract in the amount of $9,790.12.
I move that we pay $9,790.12 for the general fund.
Second.
Motion in a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
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 We're
Opposed?
voting that that library number is, I'm happy about.
It's working well.
I mean, we discussed this ad nauseam during the budget. I just wanted to point out that it's 5,000 instead of 4,000, and that's a reason to celebrate.
More money to the library, good. We have a water fund abstract in the amount of $922.74.
I move that we pay $922.24 from the water fund.
Second.
Motion is second. There's no discussion, and all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions. Last but not least, another trust and agency abstract, this one, in the amount of $23,844.19.
I move that we pay $23,844.19 from the trust and agency.
So motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? If not, then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Alright. Opposed?
I'm sorry?
It's in, okay, item number 14 is our second public comment period. Sir,
If I may,
you may.
Jack Hess, 13 South Street. The RFP that's going out for the planning and the comp plan and rezoning, is there a special need for, let's say, traffic other than what's already in that Dropbox, the road access or design standards? Is that an extra thing, or is that part of what's there already?
So that's actually 3 questions,
Oh.
which is fine. I'm just trying to figure out how best to, because they're kind of separate. So comprehensive plans as defined by the state are very broad vision statements, if you want to call it that, of what a community thinks they want the community to look like over a given period of time. So that piece would not get into the detail of things like traffic studies. It's more aspirational, I guess would be a way to describe it. Now, if the results of what the community seems to want vis-a-vis the comp plan leads to something like we want X, Y, or Z built at this intersection, as a strange example, then turning that into zoning could very well lead to studies of how does that work. But phase 1 is really the theoretical, and so we wouldn't be getting into necessarily traffic studies. I don't know that we would integrate, for example, MRB's stormwater flow analysis if we get a rain event for them to study. I don't know that that would be part of the comp plan. But part of a job of a professional planning firm to assist the committee is to tell us, yes, we do or we don't need this, that, or the other thing at this point.
Right. So was that the answer to 1 or 3?
2.5, I'm not sure.
I'm just thinking, as the comp plan is, organized and agreed upon, then the zoning reorganization or revision comes in. And is there a special section for design standards that is outside of what the RFP requests already?
So, design standards. So if the comp plan were to indicate that the community wanted design guidelines, either on commercial property or residential property, then the zoning would look to include those items. If the comp plan says we want design guidelines on commercial property between Elm and Hector, but nowhere else, then that would have to be incorporated into the language of the zoning. So it's kind of you don't know how specific, how restrictive, or how unrestrictive the zoning should be until we get a sense of what the comp plan indicates the community wants. So if we kind of look at 2008, we had a comp plan that said we want certain types of design guidelines for commercial property through site plan review type of things, but we don't want design guidelines on single-family residential housing. Kind of I always pick on the skinny atlas, what color your shingles have to be kind of thing. Then we don't write that into the zoning because the comp plan isn't looking for it. And so knowing how detailed or restrictive the zoning has to be depends on what the comp plan reveals.
Okay, the comp plan is a kind of a visionary thing and not necessarily a specific, piece of work, but it can be if need be.
Well, the funny thing that I've always found about the comp plan is it's not law. A comprehensive plan is a guiding document in the state's terminology. So it can be fairly simple or it can be fairly detailed. It depends on what the community's vision is at that point in time, which of course can change over a decade, which is why the state insists on periodic review.
Well, that makes sense. Anyway, thank you. That was good answers, and thank you for being here.
Thanks. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
What else do I have?
don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
That's fine.
So unless there's anything else that we've forgotten about, I would entertain a motion to go into executive
You
session.
had that other document up there.
Session.
Executive session.
There was one document that.
Let us know when the mulcher's
Yeah,
back.
covered.
Let us know when the mulcher's back.
I got a
I wanna
video
see
of
it
it if you want to see it.
I do. I do.
One document we didn't cover, there was,
I don't know what
where the people who wanted to buy our phone leases.
Oh, that was the one.
Oh.
I had one about the Sprint antenna.
That's what I was talking about. I don't know what the other one was.
That's actually the one I was talking about, I thought.
Oh, this is just the replacing antennas, I just wanted
Well,
to.
but that wasn't the one I was talking about.
They're
I was talking
upgrading,
about
they
the
want to,
There was
So,
a document, yeah, I don't remember, they wanted to buy our lease.
I didn't include that. I didn't
Okay,
include that tonight.
okay, because we don't want to do that anyway.
But we
I just
do.
wanted to say. Okay, that's fine.
We do need to address, it's AL 43XC 747 in the Dropbox. This is a pre-existing section of our lease with Sprint that allows them to do on-site upgrades and repairs of their existing equipment. Tom Myers has already looked at this, said that he doesn't see any issue. But we do need to approve me signing this.
Okay, I move that we approve the board and sign this document from Transcend Wireless to allow Sprint to look at, to modify their equipment. So,
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? If not, then
now I know that Tom looked this, the one thing I will, here's the discussion that I need to have is this is on the water tower, correct? We need to make sure that the replacement pieces do not weigh more than one currently weighs as part of this.
So by signing this letter, this allows them to submit the building permit to do the changes.
Okay, excellent. So that answers what my concern.
Any other discussion? All right, then all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Now I would entertain a motion to go into executive session to talk about all kinds of personnel issues.
So moved. Second. And you did it ahead of schedule. Damn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.